But let's stick with college football. We might as well just stay in the state of Pennsylvania because, J. Bart.
This is my night, man.
This is our night. And listen, I don't want to hear this is the 12-team playoff era and this, that, the other thing. But let's go back to big noon kickoff this afternoon. Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State does win 20-13. Listen, I'm going to take half a second. I am going to give Ohio State a little bit of credit. Starting left tackle goes out with injury. Backup left tackle goes out with injury. The starting left guard, and I thought Joel Klatt did a great job of explaining, that it's not just moving over one spot, that it's different position with different responsibilities. The starting left guard moves over. And Ohio State largely outplays Penn State. Final score 20-13. Frankly, there was a Will Howard pick six that was the only touchdown that Penn State scored. And you said it's your night, J. Mart, so I'm going to give you the floor, and I'll just set it up by saying this, is that, Penn State loses. James Franklin is now 1-14 against top 5 teams, 1-10 against Ohio State. And just very quickly, the final possession that Penn State had, they had first and goal on about the 5. 3 straight run plays right up the middle for no yardage, a pass into traffic. They did not obviously get any points. Ohio State got the ball back. To their credit, ran out the clock. Penn State never gets the ball back. And as I said, they fall to 7-1, 1-10 against Ohio State under James Franklin, J. Mark.
Okay. So, and we can talk about the play calling and all that in a bit. At what point is Penn State under James Franklin going to have a legitimate offense? I understand that it happened once before, and they found their way in the Rose Bowl at that point. But outside of that, what do you have to show? Drew Aller had 120 yards in the game. You couldn't run the ball between the tackles pretty much all day long. We already knew after watching the USC game you had a tight end, and that was kind of it. But the bigger thing is this. So James Franklin in the post-game press conference said, "This is all on me. Expectations come with this job, da-da-da-da-da." He said all the right things because there's nothing else you can say. It is all on him. That's exactly right, especially when you get the paycheck that he gets and the extensions that he's gotten and all this other stuff. You said something about Ryan Day a couple of weeks ago, and I think it is far more true about James Franklin even than it is about Ryan Day. But I can find a lot of people that coach football that can go to Penn State with the kind of resources that they have, with the tradition that they have, with the diehard fan base that they have, almost to a fault, with the win-loss record, all of that kind of stuff, the built-in advantages of being at Penn State. I can find a lot of people that coach football that can come in and can beat Minnesota and can beat Illinois and can beat some of these teams. With no disrespect to them intended here, but you get where I'm going here. The reason you get a job at Penn State and you hold on to it is because you beat Ohio State once in a while, at least. You beat Michigan. You beat the teams that you're not necessarily supposed to beat, but at Penn State you kind of are supposed to beat. He just doesn't do it. It never happens. And I said we talk about the play calling. Let's do it now. That play calling on the goal line series was some of the most just bankrupt I've ever seen. It was horrendous. They ran 3 times right into the teeth of the Ohio State D-line where they hadn't been successful all game, and then they had Aller throw on 4th down, not even to his tight end, but into triple coverage, and that was it. And they never got the football back because then Ohio State drowned out the last 5-13 and won the football game. That's all you got? You had trick plays. You had a direct snap to your tight end on that exact same drive, and then you get inside the 5, 1st and goal against Ohio State, where we know the beef is there on the D-line. We understand the talent. There's dudes that are going to be playing on Sunday that you're staring at, and you ran directly into them when you had no success doing it at any point during the game. And then on 4th down, you threw the ball when everybody knew it was coming. No one was surprised at that point that you tried to, quote, get creative, unquote, by throwing the football on 4th down. A lot of dudes, Aaron, that can come in and win the kind of games that James Franklin has won at Penn State. There are very few that can come in and win the games that he hasn't won. And those are the guys that you got to go out and find. Those are the guys that you go out and extend. Those are the guys that you go out and break the bank for. Eventually, you got to stop running into the same brick wall. You got to stop doing the same thing and not calling yourself insane. James Franklin is a good football coach, but at this level, he is very mediocre. I think this is the Peter principle. Like, he gets to this point where he gives you enough hope if you're a Penn State fan to think maybe this is going to be it. Maybe it's not just that we've played a bunch of cupcakes. Maybe it's not just that we barely outlasted a USC team that's one of the worst in recent memory, or certainly one of the worst in Lincoln Riley's tenure as a head coach anywhere. Maybe we're actually good this time around. We've even gotten fooled into thinking it a couple of times. And now you look at it and you see, nope, Penn State's exactly who they always are. They beat nobody. They have a high ranking. Then they bring somebody into their house that's good, and they lose. They lose a physical game where they can't score any points. You just mentioned the only touchdown in the game came courtesy of a Will Howard pick six in the first quarter. And outside of that, Penn State was getting yards about as much as you and me would have if we were out there. It's got to be better than that at Penn State. The expectation is higher. James Franklin's right. Expectations come with the job. Right. And I expect you not to have the job at some point when you don't do that, and I'm waiting for when that's actually going to happen.
Really quickly, a name you mentioned, Lincoln Riley. USC does fall at Washington.
There it is. I told you, they're terrible.
26-21 is the final. We'll talk about that on the other side. USC now 4-5. 4-5. 0-3. 0-4 in true road games, whatever it is, 0-4, I guess, including Maryland and Minnesota, among others. Let's stay on Penn State. So, listen, what you said, I agree with 100%. And I think, you know, and this is something you and I have tried to be careful about all year long, is this new 12-team playoff era, you know, this and that. Like, Penn State, so Penn State is going to, like, probably almost certainly make the 12-team college football playoff, okay? But at a certain point, like, it's just, I think the frustration has to boil over, if you're a Penn State fan, for all the reasons that you said, is that, yes, you might make that 12-team college football playoff, but if you literally never beat teams that are equal to or better than you, it's like you're going to get to the playoff and get smoked by whoever you play. Alabama.
Nobody's looking forward to seeing them get beat by 3 touchdowns by one of the other teams in the playoff, because they don't measure up. I understand they were number 3 entering the game, but this proved what I think we all thought by the eye test, which is that's not the third best team in the country. Yeah. It's just not.
No, and obviously I'm not a big Ryan Day guy, goes without saying, but I feel like I should have put more weight into, like, oh, they probably should have lost to USC, and that's like basically the only, team with a pulse that they've played so far, for lack of a better term. But no, I mean, that's where I think my frustration would be if I'm a Penn State fan and I'm not, is just the idea that, like you said, it's getting to a certain level and then never getting over the hump. Never getting over the hump. And I just think that's where I think that's where the frustration has to be if you're a Penn State fan. Yes, you can still make the 12-team college football playoff. Yes, in theory, any hypothetical, anything that you wanted to achieve this season is still on the table. I guess technically a Big Ten championship's kind of out of your control at this point. The only point I'm trying to make is that, yes, it's all in theory on the table. The problem is that you have literally over 11 years now, 12 years, whatever it's been, shown zero proof that you could actually do anything. And it's just gotten to the point where, to me, it's like, okay, cool, you're probably going to make that 12-team playoff, but at some point, can you get a win of note? And it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. And so I think that's the only point that I'm trying to make, is that basically at a certain point, if you're a Penn State fan, you just have to be so frustrated solely because of the fact that, you just got to be banging your head against the wall of, like, we will never, ever, ever, ever be able to win the games that we need to win to have the seasons that we want to have. And as you said, I know Ohio State's a good team with a good job, with good players and all that stuff, but at some point you got to beat them at some point. And I just think if you're a Penn State fan, you got to be shaking your head saying this is never going to happen with this guy as the coach.
So I don't, like I said, I don't do social media really at all anymore. But I will go to, like, The Athletic, where they have their discussion section where I can look at what both fan bases are saying to each other during the game, or I'll go after and see what people think. And I saw a comment from a Penn State, I don't know if he's a student or whatever, after the game. It said, yeah, $20 million roster makes a big difference. I'm like, dude, you can spend the money too. Like, Penn State's got a ton of money. They got a pretty good law school at Penn State. I mean, they got a lot of pretty rich alumni there too.
The largest alumni base of any school in America. I could be mistaken on that, but I'm pretty sure their alumni association is the largest in the country. So
like, I'm not saying they have spent $20 million, but they're capable of it. Like, you can't then say, well, $20 million makes a difference. Right, but that's now okay. Like, in this new world of college football, quiet. Like, if they want to spend it, you have the exact right that they do. They're not doing anything wrong. So what you're saying makes absolutely no sense. Like, just quiet down. You lost, and the reason you lost is because your head coach is on game day usually not up to snuff in these big games against these big teams. I understand it's hard to win, but you're right. It's never going to happen. He's 1-10 against Ohio State. They never beat any of the good teams, and then he sits down in the postgame and he says, this is all on me. Right, you're fired. I'm sorry. That's what I'm saying if I'm at Penn State. Like, at some point, are you going to do something different? At some point, are you going to bring in somebody and give them a chance? Like, again, bring somebody in. They can keep losing the games he loses. Like, you're not going to fall that far behind.
No, it is bad. 1-11, as I said, against Ohio State. By the way, I did look it up. According to largest.org/culture/college alumni networks, Penn State has the number one alumni network in the world with 700, or at least of American universities, 750,000 active total living alumni. So the money could be there, and I don't think money's the issue. I just think it's that they just can't get over the hump, and it is wild. I'll say this really quick, two things, and then we got to get to break and get to some other stuff. One, like you said, that offense was so good early when they had Saquon, and to never be able to replicate that in any way, shape, or form is incredible. Two, I heard this. I thought it was a pretty good point. James Franklin came up as a wide receiver coach. And, J-Mart, who's the last wide receiver that they had?
John Dotson, probably?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. As I was saying that, I realized that he did play for them. But it's like, you look at Ohio State, and we can criticize Ohio State for this, that, the other thing, but Jeremiah Smith, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka, Jackson
Garrett
Smith,
Wilson
and Jigba.
Coming off a Thursday, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he only needs one hand. So
yeah.
It's like, how do they not have one guy that can separate, get open, whatever? I don't know. But I think we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point, literally and figuratively. I just at some point you got to win one of these games, and it is wash, rinse, repeat, because year after year after year it is the same story. Penn State now, what was the stat? I said 1-14 against top 5 teams under James Franklin, 1-11 against Ohio State.